All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jan Erickson from Stepping Aside, and welcome to Somewhat Daily Tarot and Rune for the 6th day of November, 2019. Well, we have a bunch of higher self energy here today. We've got a 6 energy, that's higher self, that's harmony, shared purpose. We also have an 11 energy with the month, so we're talking the master number for illumination. So lots of awareness today, just fundamentally. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you've come back, thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and we're going to start with some astrological information, and then we're going to take 3 cards and maybe a fourth, and then we're going to look at a rune from the Elder Futhark, and then tie it all together with a geomancy rune. So lots to get going on. We have the correspondences post is up and astrological information is up. I always do those, and I use the time. I don't do the current time of when I'm doing it. I use noon as the time for those posts, and it basically just talks about astrological information that's current, having to do with working magic. And so you'll see down below that you'll see the magical correspondences for the particular day I do them on. I try to do them most days. I don't do them every day, but most of the time I get them up. But anyway, I'm trying to do better. I'm trying to get them up 7 days a week, but it doesn't always happen on the weekends. So too much other writing to do. So anyhow, the sun's in the 11th house in Scorpio still. So again, passionate, deep, intense relationships. Avoid drama and deceptive behavior. The moon's in Pisces in the 2nd house. Look inward, seek a balance. You might be upset today, or just, maybe emotions are in flux. In the 2nd house, you're looking resources. So you might, if you go shopping, you might want to buy something that's soothing and comforting, a little maybe comfort food, or maybe even like a weighted blanket. We bought one of those, and I don't regret that at all. Trying the sun, though, with the moon, we're feeling loved and supported, which I think probably comes from the higher self-influence of the 11 and the 6, because the rest of the aspects don't look as great. A square with Venus and between Venus and the moon, love life might be in flux. And so one thing that, and as we go on here today, you're going to find that we want to not take the bait on pretty much anything. Mercury's in the 11th house of Scorpio, so again, intense communications. You just have to be really careful there. Squaring the moon between Mercury and the moon, again, indecision. Also, we're in retrograde, so I don't know. A lot of this can just be blamed on that, I suppose. But probably don't want to do that, though. Venus is Sagittarius in the 12th house. You may also, your social life is positive and everything, but there might be a little karma stuff going on. A semi-square with Mars, you could have conflict over money issues, and a semi-square between Venus and Pluto as well sort of increases that intensity. So we might feel misunderstood by our partner in that discussion. And so, try to focus on practical solutions instead of emotional conversations like, okay, you feel like this is happening, so let's go ahead and make a plan, do a budget or whatever, and we'll see how we're doing, and we'll see if this is really true, or if I am having trouble with it, or if it's maybe just an anomaly, because I don't really feel like I am. I mean, maybe that's the conversation you have. I don't know. Lilith is in Pisces in the 3rd house, affecting communications, so a pity party could be possible. So just again, I don't know. Go hide under the weighted blanket. So let's see if there's anything else. Jupiter and Sagittarius in the 1st house. So you could be inspirational. That's inspirational energy. So you could be a teacher today. You might feel that. But again, Mars is in Libra. So, and also the 10th house. So, again, about work. So maybe conversations there might take an uncomfortable turn if you try to assert yourself. So that sort of energy is still happening for us in the skies today. So that's been going on now for a while. So especially with Mercury in retrograde, communications are going to be affected. So there's no other way. no matter what we do. So I guess people just need to lighten up until after the 20th. And, then if it's still continuing, then okay, I don't know. Let's go ahead and take our first 3 cards and get going on the reading. I take the 13th card each time simply for randomness sake. I don't do it in normal readings. It's just what I do here. We have the Chariot, the 7th card of the Major Arcana. We'll see if we get any more soul archetype cards. Otherwise, we might end up putting that one in the center. Again, a card of balance, card of learning when to allow and when to take control. We won't waste a whole lot of time looking at these or setting them down. Now, this is the 3rd time I've started this thing. I did get a reading going the first time. This was one of the cards, so 4 of Wands. Now, I view that as, a 4 is about structure and harmony and all of that, but it's about the foundation. It's about establishing that in a harmonious and constructive way. And here we've got 2 people coming together in intentional harmony together with each other, likely in a marriage. So. Well, we have the King of Pentacles. We may end up with a 4th card here. Whenever I get a court card, I never know. I'm going to go ahead, though, and I'm going to put the Chariot in the center. Now, we have 7 and 4 is 11, so that aligns with the month. So again, the overall numerology for the reading is 11, and so that's master number for illumination and awakening. I would say the balance in this reading, and I am going to keep the Chariot in the center, and we're going to view that as the balance card, knowing when to allow and when to take control. We'll see if that's the theme. I don't know, though. Here we have the King. He's on his throne. Let's see if we can get a little bit better. So we're going to have so much of a... There, that's better. Maybe I should be right there. Okay. No. I'm trying to get the glare out. There we go. There we go. Well, it's still a little glary. If I do that. At least there's no number to hide there. Well, we see the castle behind him. He's surrounded by greenery. He's got looks like grapes all around him. Do I have my magnifying glass? Oh, I do. My husband put new batteries in it. He's got the quinta. It's very difficult. This is a very busy card. Very difficult to see anything. These are grapes. Yeah, they're grapes. They're not pomegranates. So he's covered in grapes. Literally, the grapevines are just flowing all over him. So there's lots of abundance. He holds a scepter in his right hand and a large coin or pentacle in his left hand, in his receptive hand. If you look very, very closely, you can see 4 ram's heads, 2 on the top of his throne and 2 on the rest down below. See, there's the 2 up there, and there's the 2 down below. You can barely see this one over here, but it's right there. You see he's surrounded, just grapes are all over him, covering him basically. Of all the kings, he seems to be the easiest one to get along with. It's just that he's very, very focused on the self. And I think that that's where we're going to see the balance here. Service to self, service to others, allowing versus control. You could align those together. Control would be service to self. Allowing would be service to others. We'll take a look at the 4 before we look at the Chariot. Here you see the castle in the background, but you don't see, you see a more pure expression than you see here because, it's so busy here. And you can't even, he's almost hidden by his wealth. and by what he owns. It's almost overwhelming him. There's just so much that's his, but his back is to the kingdom. So is it in service to the kingdom, or is it simply in service to himself? But here you have a more pure expression of service to others, don't you? By this intentional coming together, you see the X'd, or I should say the crossed garlands above, symbolizing the rune Gebo, or it's in the shape of an X. It's a 7 energy also. And that's balanced energy exchange with others. And here you have the coming together of 2 separate polarities, don't you? Coming together in balance. You have the theme of the new pathway. You see the center area there. It's like 2 pillars together, and you have the entrance into a new world, into a new marriage, new life. You see the arched bridge there. If you could see the other arch, you've got an arch that's hidden by this particular wand. If you could see it, then it would represent triple aspects: mind, body, spirit, and balance on our new journey together. You see the celebration back here, but you see they're not really paying attention to them. They're paying attention to each other, aren't they? They're aligned together. You see the 3, you also see mind, body, spirit in alignment with the 3 bouquets held high. You see 4 towers. You see the center one, and then you see 3 more here. And we see forest structure and foundation. So the king, we could say about the king, he's established his own, and it's to the exclusion of other people. That could be one side of the coin. And the other side of the coin is we're going to bring all that together, and we're going to create something new and exciting and wonderful. We're going to start a new journey together. It's going to be about us instead of just one person. Things are coming into alignment. We look at the chariot, and that's what we see. We see the sphinxes down below. They're at rest. We see the king returning from somewhere, likely battle, but maybe not. Maybe he was somewhere else, a celebration of some kind. He has the star on his crown. You see the Merkabahs and the stars on the fabric that's behind him and above him. So this truly is a card of spirit and of balance. You see the cube on the front of his breastplate, and that's denoting structure. So that would be a 4 energy, right? You see the 2 crescent moons on each shoulder, and then one implied in the center. Maiden, mother, and crone, mind, body, spirit, triple aspects. You see the sun with the wings extending on either side above the shield with the dreidel on it, signifying healing the polarity within. And then you see the sphinx, both dark and light, so you're seeing the shadow side of self versus spirit, or masculine versus feminine, projective versus receptive energy. So this is a really energetic card of how we process the projective and receptive sides of self. Here, we're processing it in unity with someone else. And we're blending all of that together. But here, it looks like the king is all about himself. He's successful, certainly. But is it at the expense of other people? You don't get that feeling with this card. Let's go ahead and not do a 4th card. I don't think we're going to need one. Let's go ahead and do the rune. Pull a rune out of the bag. And with that, I do the same thing here as I do when I do bind runes. I set my intention, and I just start pulling out runes. I let them fall through my fingers inside the bag. And when I get to the final rune, that's my rune. And for a bind rune, I'm going to take 3 to 5 runes to make my bind rune. And I just use the same process. I set the intention and I get the runes I need. It's weird. Or not. We have Thurzaz. A Thurzaz is the 3rd rune of the Elder Futhark. It's the thorn. It's comprised of Isa, the straight line, and Kenaz, the torch, the light of spirit turned inward. Think Thor's hammer when you think Thurzaz. Think it can be useful in weather magic. It can be useful in breaking through barriers. It can be a means of defense. If you think Thor's hammer, you see him in the movies, he's swinging it around and he's, doing whatever he's doing with it, destroying things, saving the realm. And that's basically what the energy is, it's defense as a means of protection. And it's breaking through things. I think that in terms of, I want to see something here. It's a fire element rune, protection, impulsive behavior, giants, chaos. So I think that if we're going to use Thurazaz here, we would put it underneath the chariot and use it as part of the definition or redefinition of balance, maybe. Here, this could be a result of impulsive behavior, right? Of where the greed has taken over and you just want, and you get. And if you're the king, if you have authority in your life, maybe that's what you do, and you do it to the expense of your family or what have you. I've known people like that who, daddy has time to buy boats and all these things and go hunting and all this stuff, but what is he doing to put it into the kitty for the family, right? There's all the activity that he gets to do, the playtime. And sure, maybe once in a while, like with the boat, the family goes along, but there's just so much that is all about that guy. And so here, you're looking about building a new life with someone else, and so you're not thinking solely about the self, are you? And so one would think that you could even look at this in terms of if you want to use, heck, maybe even Thurazaz as the center point of it, as the focal point of it. You're trying to move away from the standpoint of such a service to self thought pattern to where it's all about you. With the King of Pentacles, it's really all about him. There might be benevolence there for others, but at the core, the king is about himself. It's generally speaking the queen that adds the benevolence in that then suddenly, reminds the king, well, but there's lots of things that need to get fixed around the kingdom, and we need to use our money for that, not for, whatever this nonsense is. We can't hardly even see the king anymore. We can't hardly see him. He's completely covered up. And he can't look you in the eye, although he is looking a little bit down into the future, isn't he? Well, he's thinking about himself and what he's going to do for himself and what more can I get for myself. Whereas the rest of us, we just want to come into intentional balance with everyone else and realize that our way forward is there, not with this guy. So again, if this is about authority within, how are we expressing that? Are we doing it in a way that surrenders to the notion? Because that's another thing that the chariot is about. It's about surrender. Are we doing it to surrender to the idea that we get into the flow of spirit and then suddenly we're united with everyone else, and that's where our focus is? Or is it solely on the self? Let's do a geomancy with them, because now I want to see what's going to happen. Well, I don't know what that was that came up on my screen. I didn't even look at it. I hate that when that happens, though, don't you? It's like, oh, is it conjunctio? Oh, no. I got to see which one that is. So there's two at the top. Oh, it's acquisitio. Yeah. I was thinking it was a missio, but it's not. They're the complement of one another. So one is, well, I'll show you. Theoretically, there's actually only 8 geomancy runes, but then when you create their complement, you have 16. You know, they're all associated with different planets and different signs and things like that, and different elements. And there's how I do it. You can do a variety of ways, but what I've done before I show you the rune, I created 4. I used hawthorn just like I do with my other runes. I like that. It's a witch and fairy tree, but I did 4, and what I did, can't see it very well, but I put 2 dots on one side and 1 dot on the other, and then I code it to whichever element it is. And so that one was fire, this one is water. And so you see the 2 on the other side there. There's 4 of them, and basically you're going to throw them down, and however they come up, then you put them in the order of fire, air, water, and earth. And so if you get, 2 dots, then like I did for fire, you put that down, 1 for air, 2 for water, and another for earth, 1 for earth. And then we have the geomancy rune called acquisitio. And so, whereas a missio, if you turn this upside down, you have a missio. That's loss. Acquisitio, or acquisitio, is gain. And so we gain here by going in intentional harmony with others, whereas we gain nothing by sitting on our throne all by ourselves, immersed in our wealth, you see. The 4 is about creating new life. The king here is in a place of stagnation, basically. And so we can use Thurisaz to break through that stagnation and understand, achieve harmony, achieve a better balance, a spirit-based balance, and then come into and then reform, regenerate our structure and foundation with others. Coming into intentional harmony, balanced energy exchange with other people, creating gain then in our life. I don't think we need to add anything else, do we? Sometimes we get a little lost along the way, and we get caught up in work, we get caught up in making our way in the world, and sometimes things like this just sort of unfold. But it's when we get into a flow and we don't stop to really, step out of it and look around and see where we are, see the effect we have. I think understanding the effect we have on other people is probably the hardest thing for a lot of people to do. Like I say, we get in this flow of energy and this direction, and maybe we don't realize, that we talked about this, I think yesterday, was it, or the day before, where the idea that we have to remember to come home from work and that, our family may have all kinds of things, but they don't have us because we're not there. Well, here, maybe we're seeing a choice that's maybe starting to realize that we've got to break out of that pattern of thinking only about the self. Maybe we don't even realize that that's what we're doing, or that that's the effect of what we're doing, because maybe our intention is to not do that. But maybe we don't know how to manifest our intention in a way that actually preserves the dignity of our relationships with others. And so maybe, you think you're out there doing the right thing, because you have as your goal, I've got money to support my family, but maybe, you get a little confused maybe, and maybe you're really not that person. And maybe you're somebody that's just out there doing it for yourself. You really just don't want to be at home with the family. Maybe you're just not comfortable in that environment. You're more comfortable in a less emotionally charged maybe environment. Although I've been in some pretty emotionally charged work environments, so I don't know. Sometimes coming home was the calmest thing I could do. I know others that's true for, so I don't know. A lot of it just is about realizing, I think, how we, again, come across. What is the effect of our behavior? We honestly may not realize it. And if we're not listening to the other people in our lives who are trying to give us feedback, or if we've become so authoritarian that they're afraid to say anything to us, you see, that's the other thing. Maybe they don't want to complain. Maybe they realize it's going to fall on deaf ears. Maybe they've tried and you haven't heard. But there just seems to be in this reading service to self and service to others. It just seems to be that. And when we focus on service to others, whereas there might be gain that we may acquire things, as the king. We're all by ourselves in our greenery, in our grapes, right? So I don't know. My husband was bottling up some raspberry wine yesterday, and so it's not. Although it's not grape wine, it's was made from raspberry, and I was doing something else, and so I wasn't helping him, and he didn't wait for me, and so he lost a bottle because it dumped on the floor. So I don't know. So he's covered in wine. Basically, we went outside and came back in. The whole house smelled like a winery. He got it cleaned up, but there's only so much you can do. The smell has to dissipate. So plus, I looked down at his sock, and his sock was still covered in wine. So anyhow, so yesterday he was the king and wearing his grapes, although they were raspberries. So anyhow. It was yummy, though. We had some, and we've been doing that this year. We started making wine. He did, and we've made dandelion, which is, if you've not had dandelion wine, it's wonderful. The hawthorn is still for. It's not. I don't know if it's completely done. I don't think he's bottled it up yet, so it must still be fermenting. I think we've got some that are due to come out in the first part of December. But we've got blackberry and raspberry and dandelion and hawthorn berry, and he wants to do orange. That's the next one. I have to order more jars. I have to order more gallon jars because we don't have enough. And so he wants to do some of that. And I can't think, what else has he done? He made some brandy too, which was interesting, but I don't. He did it with whiskey, and I don't like whiskey, so I don't plan on having any of that. But he's made Kahlua, and he's made amaretto, which is my favorite in the entire world. I don't generally drink, but in the past, when I was younger, my favorite was amaretto, and so he made me some amaretto. So I will have amaretto once in a while, and I do like the wine, but I'm not someone who drinks, so I don't have very much when I do. I'm more of a weed person, so I'll just tell you that I'm a cannabis patient, and so I did in my youth. I didn't while I was, raising the boys. We didn't do that, but we did in the beginning, and then we didn't, and then because you get to, you just got to realize, well, it wasn't legal, right, in any capacity at that time. So it's a risk, right? And so we didn't want to have that risk. We didn't put our kids through that. So we stopped doing anything at all, right? And we were martial artists and all of that. And so then when I got ill, though, and when it seemed clear that I wasn't going to survive, I had a very severe form of RA, of rheumatoid arthritis. I never could get out of the severe range, and my body had become so toxic at that point that things were happening that were scary. And so I just decided to become a cannabis patient, and we grew, and while we were growing for me, well, my husband did that over the summer, and it was coming into harvest in the fall and everything. I was doing the research about cannabis and how it helps people heal. So we'll close with a little bit of talk about that. If you are in a legal state in any capacity, medical or recreational, consider cannabis if you have chronic illness, if you have cancer, if you have anything serious going on. Even if you don't, I would encourage everyone to incorporate dietary hemp hearts. That's an easy one to put into your diet, into smoothies, into soups, casseroles, whatever you're going to do. I cook with it. I put it in my smoothies. I also use raw leaf if I have it, cannabis leaf in my smoothies. I don't grow industrial hemp, but I do grow cannabis, and cannabis saved my life. I started making my medicines at the end of December, in December of 2010. I had been ill for 13 years, severely so. I began taking them. I decided the regimen I would use so I would be consistent because I wanted to track my progress. I thought at that point that I might not die now. After reading all that I did about how cannabis can heal people, I just felt like I had some hope. Now, I didn't think that I would go into remission, all right? And I will tell you that. I'm honest about that. I did not think I would go into remission, but I did. I started during the last week of December. By the middle of March, I was in clinical remission. I had been coming off of everything gradually, a little bit here, a little bit there, reducing. I was on 2 blood pressure pills, a bunch of RA meds. I was on tramadol. I mean, was it tramadol or trazodone? Tramadol, one of the two. Tramadol, I think. I stopped that one immediately. I didn't even taper. I just stopped it. No side effects, nothing. I started coming off the blood pressure pills. I had become insulin resistant during this time when I became toxic. And I had to have my primary care doctor help me come off, do my A1Cs and make sure, that I wasn't going to trigger anything. Came off the metformin, stayed on the Humira until September of 2015 because I was terrified. The last year, though, I was messing around with the dosage and not taking it hardly at all. So theoretically, it was probably 2014 when I was theoretically off of it, but not exactly. So September 13th of 2015 was my last injection of Humira. I've had no return of symptoms. I probably could have stopped it right away, but I was too terrified. I had been too ill, right? So I stayed on the cannabis. About a year later, I started making actual cannabis oil, this thick, sludgy stuff you use for cancer and stuff. I started making that, and I use that as a prophylaxis now, and not so much the other cannabis medicines I was making, although I do use tincture in my teas. But other than that, and that's a glycerate, which is made from an alcohol tincture, and then you combine it equal parts glycerin on the stove and simmer it, and you basically let the alcohol escape and dissipate. And then all you have is, you do that when you make a syrup, basically, and you're combining, corn syrup with whatever, you've got your juice or whatever that you're making your syrup out of. Same sort of process. And so I make a glycerate for that, and I do use that, but between that and then I make herbal tinctures. I have an RA tincture that I formulated back then, and I use it every day as well, along with some other things just to keep my body flush, to keep my immune system. I take probiotics. My immune system is doing so well now. It's any permeability that might be there is just slight. And again, I added probiotics to the mix, and that's likely been repaired. So I don't know. Cannabis is worth a try. If you are very ill, it can make all the difference. What it does basically is and industrial hemp will do basically the same thing, but I don't know what the synergistic effect of the higher THC has with the rest of it. I would not say use industrial hemp. The CBD stuff you can buy in all 50 states, that's not cannabis. Well, it's a form of it, but we call that industrial hemp. And so it's been made from something that doesn't have much THC in it, just trace amounts. For whatever reason, over the years, it got bred out, and so they use that, and that's what hemp hearts comes from. So it's not that the CBD oils and tinctures that you can buy and creams and salves are not effective. They're not going to do for you, though, what a cannabis version will do, an actual high THC version will do, because that's going to add a synergistic effect that the others just don't have. Plus, it's going to help with pain and all of that. Now, how that works, though, in terms of switching on the endocannabinoid system and interacting with the cannabinoid receptors, I can't answer that. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if industrial hemp will activate that as well as cannabis will. That I don't know, and I've not been able to find that out yet. Once this gets resolved federally, we're going to see so much research happen, and a lot of these, we're going to have these answers. And so it may not be necessary to use actual, what we call cannabis, traditional THC cannabis, as much as we can maybe just use the industrial hemp and achieve similar results. But if you're really ill, I wouldn't use the industrial hemp version. I would go for the cannabis version until we know. I just don't see people having the same results when they're really ill, at least anecdotally that I've read, with industrial hemp products versus the actual cannabis ones. So my advice is, if you're really ill and you live in a legal state, go for the cannabis, the actual THC stuff instead of the industrial hemp stuff. That you're likely not going to be able to buy at your local Safeway. So, you're going to have to either grow it yourself, you're going to have to go to a dispensary that sells it. But I do recommend it. It saved my life, and I don't know what else to say. If you want to read about it, you can, and you have Kindle Unlimited, you can read about it for free. My very first book I wrote, I'm also an author, and the very first book I wrote is called Confessions of a Back Porch Herbalist. In the first half, it has a lovely picture of a early budding cuvee plant I had. And it's just a gorgeous picture. And I said, if I ever write a book, I'm going to use this as my cover. Well, so then I decided I've been doing posts on the blog, right? And I thought, I'm just going to put this in the book. And so I stopped doing that, and I started pulling everything out and rewriting it and then adding more. And so the first half of the book is the cannabis part, and the second half of the book is the herbal part, the rest of the traditional herbs. And so, if you're interested at all, I think it's $2.99 to buy on Kindle. I think I charged a little bit more, maybe $4.99 or $5.99 or something like that for the book, the actual hard copy, or it's paperback. But so it's not very long, but it does tell you how I did it, and it tells you how ill I was and what my philosophy was and the research I did and how I ended up viewing all of this. And again, if it helps, then great. And if it gets you thinking about other alternative modes of healing, even better. So, we don't have to remain ill. Okay, we don't. And so we can get on that hamster wheel of allopathic medicine, and there's times when we have to do that. But if we can find a way to make our body heal itself, it can. And I just think that we're going to, when all is said and done, discover that it's going to be plant-based medicines that do it. Cannabis is going to be one of them. So in any event, I guess that's it. We'll talk again tomorrow. And thank you so much for coming by. Do check out the blog. And if you want to check out Confessions of a Back Porch Herbalist, it is available on Amazon. And again, free to read on Kindle. If you just want to see how I did it. So in any event, because I'm well now, yay. Anyway, we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks so much again for coming by. Be good to yourself, be good to one another, and blessed be.